Okay, welcome everybody to the November Policy and Equity Committee meeting for the Cincinnati Public School Board. We are meeting a little early this month because of the Thanksgiving holiday. So thank you everybody for their flexibility and happy birthday to Kathy. We're going to start with some introductions. Maybe if we could start with Rob and go around the horseshoe.
Yes, Rob Wilson. And if you'd like to speak during the speaking of the public session at the end, please click the hand icon and we will invite you at the end of the meeting after we ask you your name and association to the district. And if you're in person, just let the chair know you want to speak at the end. Thank you.
Cynthia Doman, Superintendent's Office.
Emily Campbell, Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
Karen Nimbus, CFT Field Representative.
Lauren Haverkoss, Chief Audit Executive.
Mary Weinberg, Board Member.
Ben Lindy, Board Member.
Kendra Matt, Board Member.
Shauna Murphy, Superintendent.
Dan Hoying, General Counsel.
Stephanie Scott, Assistant General Counsel.
Chrissy Reeves, Director of Student Services.
Michael Gustin, Treasurer.
Jeremy Gullihew, Chief Information Officer.
Eric King, Director of IT Applications.
Amanda Vargo, Testing and Assessment Manager.
Okay, welcome everybody. We have a full agenda this morning, and we are going to end today no later than 11:30, and appreciate everybody who is here. We have in our continued discussion, item 1, policy 1330 on evaluation of the treasurer. Dan, is there anything you want to share about I think I know what but for everybody else?
Yeah, good morning. So the assignment was to update the evaluation of the treasurer policy 1330. We used as a guideline the work that the board did last year on the evaluation of the superintendent policy as well. There was feedback offered by the Finance Committee with respect to the evaluation of the treasurer. So the changes that we've made have essentially incorporated those two things, the superintendent's evaluation policy and the feedback from the Finance Committee. The treasurers reviewed it as well, and I think made some suggestions. So welcome your feedback, questions, etc. There's a slightly different timeline here than the superintendent's evaluation, and I think that's intentional to offset those so the board isn't doing that work at the same time. Generally, otherwise, it mirrors what we did with the superintendent's evaluation with respect to the content and the scoring of it are all similar to the superintendent's evaluation policy. Welcome your questions.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. We have Mike. How do you feel about this? Any questions, thoughts?
Yeah, this is good. Appreciate Dan and his work and redlining it and sharing it with me. And we incorporated the feedback from the Finance Committee, so I think this is a very good, very solid evaluation policy.
Colleagues, Mrs. Weinberg, Ms. Mapp.
No, I don't have anything, but I do appreciate how it aligns and mirrors what is similar to the superintendent's evaluation. So thank you for that.
Okay, great. So I think absent other discussion or concerns, we can recommend this to go through at the next available board meeting. This has been discussed by, I think, every single board member in multiple committees, and I'd feel very comfortable with this being in the consent agenda, unless there's any concerns from my colleagues.
No concerns.
Okay. Dan, does that get you everything you need?
It does. We'll move forward and include this on the include this on the consent agenda at not this Monday, but the following Monday.
Okay. Outstanding. Great. So we're then ready to move to item 2, which is policy 5421 on grading. And I think we got a couple things for this one. There is on board docs some option language which I'm happy to talk through in a second, but I think we also have this presentation.
I have hard copies as well if you need them.
Yo, that's great. Yeah, I think I don't really have a preference as to which we start with. Would the folks who put this presentation together like to go first?
I think it goes either way. It's not really a presentation as much as it's really just a codification and clarification on some of the things we talked about last week.
Okay.
To clarify, as well as some opportunity for discussion around getting clarity from the committee on, the direction we were looking to go for implementation. Just kind of some of the discussion points, not really a presentation.
Okay.
Is this on board docs or no? Jeremy, is it?
Sorry, I'm deferring to.
What, which one is it? 'Cause I have not found it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. That's great. Phyllis, if you do have it, could you post it under the grading section?
I have it and I can post it.
Or Dan can post it?
Thank you.
Great. Awesome. That's helpful because if people are watching at home or later on and they want to pull this up and look through it, they can do that. Everybody in the room has the hard copy, and thank you for printing these. So then, yeah, let's start then with the language for a second. This is so exciting. We have a popular policy committee. There's rarely this many people here.
We're gonna bring a chair in for you. We'll bring a chair over. Oh, yeah, let's bring it. No, I was.
Okay, so, Rob, could you pull up the sample language? Okay, so I wanted us to have something to react to, and so I appreciate Dan's help in looking over this, and I think it also members of the superintendent and her team have looked at it also. The two versions based on the discussion we had at the October meeting, and what you'll see is that nothing's been changed in the grading policy. But if you scroll down just a little bit, Rob, you'll see version 1 language. And I will go over this just for a moment, and then we can look at option 2. It says no less than twice each school year, the district will ensure that the report card that communicates student grades to families also includes the following on the same document. Number 1, the student's current reading level expressed in terms of grade level. So, for example, reading at 2nd grade level, reading at 4th grade level. Item 2, the student's current math level expressed in the same terms. And then the date and source of where that information came from. So it could be fall iReady, spring iReady. If the district's interim assessments change over time, that could get changed too. But this is option 1. That next paragraph says this would apply to all students in grades K-8. It will apply to high school students where relevant data is available. This may need to, any of this can change, but I think what kinds of assessments are used and available changes depending on which age the student is in. And so the thought was, could this language reflect that? And then the last paragraph is about when this starts. So the basic idea is preceding 2 paragraphs would go into effect starting next school year. Though in this school year, 25-26, district will send this information home at least once. I also thought that Board Member Craig had a good piece of feedback when we discussed about this on Monday about distinguishing between report cards and transcripts. And so the policy draft explicitly says the preceding 2 paragraphs also apply only to report cards and not to student transcripts. I thought that was a good point that he made. Hadn't thought about it, and I think this is better because we're talking about it as a group. So I think we can get into, again, I think the spirit here, by the way, is to have something to react to, not that it needs to be this particular language. But if we go to option 2, and keep going all the way down, Rob. It is exactly the same. The only thing that is different is there's one more number in that list, and it says a measure of students' growth over the last year. This was a point that Ms. Vargo made in the last policy committee meeting. We kind of kicked around pros and cons. We have one option that has no, it's just reading level and math level, and then one that also includes this growth idea. So yeah, I think I would love to hear, I think certainly ideas and feedback from my colleagues, but I'm Jeremy, is there content here you all would like to share that can be relevant to this?
Yeah, I think it would be relevant in terms of, again, kind of was developed in parallel to when this wording was being put together. So I think there's definitely some overlap in terms of things to consider as we're making our choices between that wording.
That's great. So maybe we'll flip to the deck for a moment. Robin, anything from your team that you'd like to share?
So again, some of this is just for discussion and clarification or codifying what we talked about last time. The first 3 slides we won't go through in any length. It was just, there were questions around the timing, like when are the assessments done and are they available for when report cards typically go out? So it provides an overlap of like when the calendar alignment would be between those assessments. The second slide just is just detailing, so we have kind of a clear understanding as to what assessments are given at what time, which would help us dictate what data would be available to use for each of those reporting segments. The third just, again, offers a quick screenshot of what we talked about in terms of the physical act of adding it to the report card in focus is a matter of finding, do we have the data set available? And this is just a quick screen capture that shows, here's all the fields like that we already captured from iReady. We would just have a little bit of development time to put those on the report card. But as to reiterate kind of what I said last week or at the last meeting, that's not really the challenge as much as it is determining what factors would go into determining what the on-grade level indicator would be, whether that's going to be based on a single data point, multiple data points, and which of those. Which, the next slide, is really where this comes through, and this is really the meat of what we've just kind of discussed. I think as administration, we looked at a range that I think admittedly is a little bit below probably what the target of the committee would be, and I think it goes to a little bit higher than what maybe the committee is looking for. But these are the approaches we discussed and looked at, and some of the information around each of them. The first, where we started at, I think where we started the original thought to the conversation before the last committee meeting, was around just adding literally the benchmark scale scores, maybe along with OST, those things that were already pre-existing, that don't take interpretation, it's just a literal putting of the scores on. That's a relatively simple ask, something that's available, and for all intents and purposes, it's pretty common from districts that we've seen. The next one, it gets a little more complicated, is using the iReady criterion based for an on-grade level indicator. So some of the things to be aware of in that is that it is limited availability. So currently iReady is in math and reading, which I know is our focus, but that does not include science and social studies. It's only available from K-6 and some 7th and 8th. Some 7th and 8th still use MAP, which does not have that criterion referenced on grade level available option. It's still only in the percentile. Has the benefit and the consequences of being a single data point. So it gives us a single point of reference that we can pull to put on the report card, but that also means that a student who had a bad testing day not only now has shown a lower score, but on the report card is going to see potentially a off grade level because of a bad day. So there are some pros and cons to that. And obviously it requires some parental explanation. So if you look to the right, really the indication here is as we go down this list, 2 things happen. One, the complexity grows, and that could be a reflection of whether that's internal to us, whether it's harder for us to come up with what is the answer going to be for these multiple factors into a single feedback point, or it also includes complexity for trying to explain that to a parent, right? It becomes, this is a single point, this is what test score, relatively simple explanation, to going to, if we have 10 factors that go into the indicator of on grade or off grade, then trying to explain all 10 of those factors to understand, like, this is everything that goes into it, becomes much more complex. So the third option is very similar, just using the percentile base that's available both in iReady and MAP. And then the fourth is more of the custom. That one goes pretty on the far end of, we take how many ever multiple data points we need and make an internal CPS-based decision on does this indicate X or Y. The consequence or the thoughts behind that also would be, though, that it exposes us to some subjectivity. And it starts almost getting back to the point of being a hazy reflection of what the intent of the grade is in the first place. So that's kind of the spectrum that we looked at in terms of how do we take what we're looking at and put into implementation. And of course, I think the ask was to bring back an ETA, right? And I know this isn't a direct answer, but
Honesty is great. You know, like whatever the honest answer is
but the
is
intent
great.
here is really like along with this progression, really the ETA goes with it, right? So option, approach 1, immediate. Approach 4, a lot of time before we would be ready to actually put that out, because it would include training, education, a whole bunch of things in a strategic, kind of thought pattern. There is some additional information here that we can go into if interested in terms of, to your point of whether we include growth or not. Amanda can definitely speak to some of the considerations around what a growth indicator would look like. Some other considerations on how the on-grade level plays, as well as, and kind of turned into a personal rabbit hole that I went down, but some research around what other districts are doing in terms of how they approach this and if they approach this. So those are just topics if we wanted to go into them.
It's great. I will just say one very quick thing, but then I'm most interested in what my colleagues want to ask about. In writing the draft, one of the things I tried to do is offer enough specificity that something meaningful happened on a meaningful timeline, but enough vagueness that the administration can figure out all kinds of different pieces of this. I don't know if I hit that sweet spot correctly or not, but just please know that was the intention. So I think there's room in the language that's there to do any number of these things, so long as at least some version of it happens this school year, and so long as it communicates the student's reading level. I would just distinguish, like some of these I think do that quite well. I think reading level means 3rd grade reading level, 4th grade reading level, 2nd grade reading level. It doesn't mean yes or no, on grade level, not on grade level. And it doesn't mean percentile. It would mean like, what is the grade level? So like it provides some structure around these things, but also I think a lot of room to figure out. I'm not an expert on all of this, but we had a robust discussion Monday. I don't know, Ms. Mapp, Mrs. Weinberg.
Yeah, I'll just add, based off of what you suggested with the 2 different options, I do like the wording. I would be for option 1, just simply because I know in option 2, you're stating to add the measure of the student growth in the reading and the math over the last year. And I feel like we could provide the additional letter that does go home with the families in that case, rather than it actually being put onto the document. I think what really should be important on the report card is that reading level and that math level, and then attaching to the report card the take-home sheet that they usually give, whether it's the map or whether it's the iReady, that will show a little bit more into detail so that parents are aware. Because at this point here, I think we're giving a transparency level that the parents want. They want to know what reading level is my child on, what math level is my child on. So I would go with option 1.
Thanks, Mrs. Weinberg. Ms. Mapp.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate the feedback that Mr. Gallahue presented. I think it really does make us think a little bit deeper about, as we talked about in the last meeting, what are those unintended consequences that may arise. And so I think truly before we are able to move something forward, we do have to kind of assess what that will look like. When I was just drilling down on this, when we're talking about what reading level, I was wondering about maybe the language, and I'm asking you all as the experts, would it be maybe less harmful to maybe identify if they're at, advanced or accelerated proficiency level, like use that same type of language where it's aligning to what the state tests is communicated? I know that we talked about wanting to ensure that there was more understanding around the report card, so maybe using similar language. I don't know if that creates maybe more of a vague context, or if it helps it to be more specific, but I wanted to make sure that we're honoring what was communicated about ensuring that we're not labeling or we're not creating more harmful consequences to our students and to our parents. And so I just wanted to just pause there to kind of get you all's perspective and also my colleagues' perspective about that consideration.
So I am very luckily joined today by a handful of people that we brought in preparation. So for that one, I would really redirect to the academic side of our house to kind of speak more around that particular area if they're comfortable with that.
Yeah, I agree that we don't want to cause harm. The proficiency advance, we could use that. I think what I like most about iReady is it's going to give you that score of where your child is and then tell you where they should be and then things that you could do to get them there. So if I am a second grader that's reading below grade level, it's going to tell me I should be here. So if I have a 458, it's going to tell me I should have a 470, right? And so I think the simpler we give it to our parents so that they have clear understanding of this is what needs to happen at home, because iReady's going to tell you, like, you need to work on sight words, or they need to read literature and comprehension skills. I think that's going to really help with that piece if we use that. I understand exactly what you and your colleagues are trying to do with letting parents know your child is not on grade level, and how do we get your child on grade level? You need to know that they're not on grade level, or if they're above grade level, what are we doing with the children that are above grade level? So I think there's a catch between each one of them, but I think causing harm is at the forefront of our mind of what are we saying to our parents and the kids that are behind but are working really hard to get where they need to be.
Go ahead. Thank you for that.
So just to offer a point of clarity around metrics that are available and where they're available, if we're talking about a grade level, like a grade level placement specifically, that is only associated with the iReady assessment, which we give K-6 and some 7 and 8. So that would not be a consistent metric we could give K-8 and is not available at all in the high school space. So I just want to be clear about that. If we used a metric such as a percentile or even a projected proficiency on the Ohio State test, that is available for all of our benchmark tests. So if I just want to make sure everyone's kind of clear on that. Like, we can't necessarily give an on grade level per the language of the policy for grade levels and subjects that do not use iReady testing, because that information is just not available.
I had a response if you're.
Go ahead.
Rob, is it possible to go back one policy committee meeting and pull up those graphs that we looked at? If you go to the October 31st one. They're all the same. Yeah, they can either be from Monday night or from the last policy.
I think as he's pulling that up, my concern is what you all are sharing, is making sure that there is alignment with the data points that's being communicated, and also to ensure that we're not using just one interpretation of a metric to determine whether a student is on grade level or not. So I think that there does create that level of complexity where we do have to make sure that we're being very intentional about how we communicate it. I do want the information communicated out. I do think that is important and is imperative for our students to know, for our parents to know, as well as for all of us to know as a district. Again, I will continue to stress, I think that helps move growth forward, but looking more at the information that has been presented to us, I think we do need to do this, like, we need to slow walk it to make sure that we're all on one accord. And again, to make sure that there's that language that's written in here about the intentionality around it, right? This is to make sure that there's that transparency, but also that we're trying to provide that data literacy component to our parents and our students as well.
And I would agree with you, Board Member Mapp. I think just really sharing with our parents our intentions and just also being very transparent. And you had mentioned about wanting to be consistent with what we're providing. I think that we should just also be consistent anyway within the district, whether it's providing parents with the iReady report, whether it's providing parents with MAP reports. We should just be consistent so they understand anyway. So it's all in together, basically.
So, thank you. Thank you. I would like to make a strong case that we keep the language, reading level and math level with the grade levels on there. For me, it's important enough that I'd be willing to drop 7th and 8th grade from the language and just do it K6 where we have the data. And I want to make a case for why. I think it's easiest to do by looking at some of the example blue dots on these graphs. Like if you look at school B and you look at all the students who are getting A's, look at the very top inside the red circle, but like one of those dots towards the very top. If we did something like expected to pass or expected to fail the state reading exam this year, the student who is inside the red circle, but at the very top of that circle, would have a report card come home that says expected not to pass. The student at the very bottom of the red circle, who's also, by the way, getting an A, that comes home, would also have a report card that says expected not to pass. One of those students is probably half a grade level below. One of them is probably 3 or 4 grade levels below. There is a huge difference to that parent in knowing that information. And the proposal of having it map onto the report card categories, it just tells the parent less information. You know, and I think the driving motivation this for me, and I'll share, this information was really important to me as a dad for my son, looking at the iReady report, because he was not only not on grade level, but he was at successive iReady reports falling down the percentile. I only knew how to find that because I've worked in education for 20 years and I knew what to look for on the iReady report. And I go to a school that sends the iReady reports home in the Tuesday folders. Not all schools do that. And so I just think there's such a huge difference between those two students and what those parents deserve to know. I would rather us shrink the grades that we're going to do this in, but share that information rather than use some other language that's less helpful to parents, but cover more grade levels. I'm one person's perspective. I'm one vote, but that's my case for why the language would be the specific reading levels. But I'd certainly welcome feedback on that.
No, I can see your perspective on that. And if we skimmed it down to K through 6, I feel like the goal would be to ensure that those grades, we're not going to have the issue that we kind of currently have where we're moving into 7th and 8th grade and 9th grade where they're falling behind. We're going to be on top of it. And I think I would be okay with the K through 6, especially keeping it at the language that you suggested, because I do like the reading level, the math level. I do appreciate that. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. Ms. Mapp, what do you think?
So for the iReady, if we kept it K through 6, iReady does focuses on the reading and the math. Will be ultimately using the data points from, I guess I'm trying to figure out when we would be aligning or potentially aligning those metrics to put them on the report card. Can you speak, I know it's in the presentation, but can you speak to that a little bit more? Because again, I don't want us to just take one snapshot and make a determination. When we do collect data, it is important that we have multiple, perspectives to make that determination or that conclusion around where that child is. So that is one thing that I want to make sure that we're getting accurately as much as possible, or we're just not using one metric, but we're trying to use several, metric points to then make this overall conclusion about where the child's, grade level is. Because to your point again, I can speak to that. My child can have a bad day, or my child can come back from school from being sick and then have to take a test where they may not perform at their best. But if that's the only metric point that we have, that may not give a true read of where the child actually stands. So I'm just curious to know where the alignment is with how we would have these data points reflected to then make that conclusion. I'm okay with using the iReady. I'm okay with, maybe this is a pilot where we begin with K through 6 to identify how effective this is and how we begin to, find, I guess, strategies to make it expand across all of our grade bands. But I want to, again, ensure that we're not just using one data point to make this determination.
Can I respond real quick? I don't, maybe there's something I don't know about. That seems highly likely, but I don't, it may not be able to do that. But I'm wondering if a way to address the concern, which I feel like is a really valid one. I'm not inside my children's head, but I know I've had days where I've been a terrible test taker. I wonder if there's some language that could go on there that says what it is and what it isn't, that it's one point in time. And that it may or may not be a perfect representation of the student's holistic performance. I think the more things you have to average together to get like a piece of information that has more data that goes into it, I think the longer it would take and the more to the complexity point. Do you have a reaction to like the language that would explain what it is and what it isn't?
So, again, to ensure that, because I think that labeling piece, again, stands out to me. Anytime that I've had to interpret or communicate data back to individuals, I think communicating that this is a snapshot in time, that could be helpful, right? Where we're not limiting or creating a false narrative of this is where the child is, but this is where the child scored on this particular assessment at this particular time. Right, and then what we can do to make sure we're putting interventions in place to support our students' growth. I would be more interested in seeing that reflected than to just make a conclusion to say that this is the child's grade level, but this is where they're reflecting with this particular metric on this particular assessment, this point in time.
And I think I just wanted to add, Board Member Mapp, just, from being a former teacher, I think the goal would be to provide that communication that you're talking about and not just sending this home and saying, oh, the parent just needs to figure it out. Just really taking that snapshot and providing and stating that this is a snapshot, but it's also based off of how your child is doing in the class, the type of grades that they're getting on the other particular assignments, and then with this test that they took as well. So you are correct. It would be a snapshot. It's not anything final, but we want to make sure that we give them the proper, I guess, information on what interventions are being put in place, rather than just saying this is what it is and okay, figure it out. We have to be supportive as well. But I would be very, I wouldn't say opposed, but I would prefer to just keep it simple on the report card, because if you get into too much, then it becomes very confusing. And I think then it takes the stage of the families and the teacher to come together too as well, to have that good communication.
Dr. Smith, we would love to hear from you. My mic was off, sorry.
Along with what you guys are saying, I really, really appreciate that. My thoughts are we could maybe do something that says this iReady score is in alignment with what I am seeing in the classroom, or this is not in alignment with what I'm seeing because these are the data points I've seen with your child so far, and we are trending in another direction other than what we've seen with this score. So it would then give the teacher opportunity too to say, this is directly, Alicia is a 500. What I see in my class is a 500, it is in alignment. This is not in alignment with what I see with Alicia because of these various things that I've now seen in my classroom. Her comprehension checks, her checks for understanding, her Acadience data. And we could probably create a drop down that would just check it so the parent knows that the kid is trending in that direction if we're trying to make sure that we give the parents and the teachers an opportunity for those kids who may have had a bad testing day. That may not, that's not gonna be for a whole bunch of kids, but for the kids that it is for, it would give us an opportunity to get us all on the same page.
So, what if, could we go back to that language, Rob? Okay, so I think I'm not hearing either Mrs. Weinberg or Ms. Mapp make a case for option 2. I'm not either. So I think we're looking at option 1. Option 1 is the one that's just reading level, math level. Okay. So what if there were something that said, like if there were a new paragraph at the end of all this that said the administration will include language explaining that any one assessment is a snapshot in time, and the teacher can provide additional context on interventions in place and whether the interventions and or enrichment. Can versus should is a good question. I don't know the answer. I'm just thinking. What do you think?
The teacher may.
I feel like should, right? Like if it's multiple grade levels. Yeah.
Not can, it should.
And just to be clear too, I think there are so many different. I'm a little nervous about the drop down menu, but I think because there's so many different ways a teacher might want to go about doing this, and so if we were to put language in there and I'm trying to be really thoughtful about this. I know we have our CFT field rep here. Like I think there are multiple ways to be a great teacher. I don't want to be overly prescriptive in this, but I do think we can signal what our values are. Right? And our values are, I think, my values are trying to show up for the student and for the family, and I think that there's so many different ways to do that, but the teacher should have some way of doing that. And it's going to be different by school and different by community. So but I'm open.
But the process should be the same though.
Yes. I like the additional language. And then I would also just add, at the forefront of it all, that data literacy component, what our intentions are around this. So if there could just be Dan, if you could add maybe some type of, general language as to why we are doing this and what our hopes are to, accomplish with not only the parent to be informed, but what we're trying to do as a district around this data literacy piece to improve outcomes. I mean, that's important for me.
I think I'm with you, and I think that's important. I'm very happy to support that. It's very important to me also. I'm very happy to support that. I want us to be just thoughtful about timing. It makes me want to see if we can write this language together in this room today. Here's my reasoning. This is our last policy committee of the year, but we won't have a board meeting after it. So like if we want Mrs. Weinberg to be able to vote on this policy, like we got to have it come out today. And so if I think maybe if we could just say exactly what you did and we can get Dan to write it down. I think.
But also, you don't have to, I can understand the rush, but I get it, but don't just put it all on me, though.
No, and it's not, I don't mean to make that all about
well,
Mrs.
Dan and
Weinberg. I think
They're working on it, but.
there are going to be
again,
so many
we-
other things happening in January. It'll be nice
Stated
to
language
get this
around
done.
the importance of data literacy and for, yes. And so I think that helps to draw in that last point that you made for number 4. And so that will help explain the additional information that will come home with the report card.
Yep.
And so say if they
And we can come back and have them read it. While they're working on that, before we totally leave this topic, one of the things that Eve said on Monday was caring a lot about teachers who are doing the grading in all of this. We do have Karen here. I don't know, we'll certainly have a hearing of public at the end, but while we're on this, like, do you have anything you want to share on this recommendation?
I appreciate the opportunity, and also the care that's being put into this, because I do think it could have unintended consequences. I think it's probably another layer of work for teachers, and I'm sure that they will be happy to add additional information on the report cards that reflects, I think what you're trying to get at is if the snapshot assessment doesn't reflect what the teacher thinks the level to which they're working in class, that it would be an opportunity to do that. So how they do that, I don't know, how you're proposing that happens. Drop-down menus, I think, are problematic. So
Is
I'm
there
not on the grading. This is not my wheelhouse.
Yeah,
I'll just
no
say
problem.
that.
I
I'm
just-
not on the grading and assessment
No problem.
committee, and I have not given grades like this.
No
So
problem.
I would appreciate the opportunity to kind of take it back to the people that I work with, and to teachers, to see how they feel about it, because I don't honestly feel comfortable speaking for all of these teachers who are doing this work right now.
So I just had one comment. So in particular to this policy, it's not necessarily with the grading. We just want to add verbiage about the testing, if the child is on grade level or not on grade level.
Right.
So it wouldn't really be anything with grading. Teachers are already grading, they're already doing whatever that they have to do, of course, to be great in the classroom. So I think you had said something about another layer of work. I don't think this would be a layer of work. I think this would just be an addition to just bring clarity to parents and families. So I didn't see it as grading. I just see it
Yeah.
as the additional
Additional,
test that they already are taking and they already are discussing with them the score.
excuse me for talking over you.
Nope, you're okay. Go ahead.
But when it comes to clarifying whether the teacher thinks that what is reflected on the assessment is in alignment with how the student is performing in class, I'm not sure what that will look like, how they'll have the opportunity to reflect that in text or a drop-down menu, or, I think sometimes the devil's in the details.
No,
and
absolutely.
That might, I think parents do get this information at student-teacher conferences, for instance.
Not all,
Not all.
not all,
And
because I
especially
get all the
if-
emails.
And if they don't go, or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I think to the extent that there's an opportunity for additional conversation around that.
That's the
between
part that I
parents
want, the
and
additional conversation. So not
I think that's-
big on the drop-down menu, but just having that additional conversation that you would already be expecting them to have at the parent-teacher conference, whether it's online, whether it's through an email, whether it's in person. So.
So Kendra, Ms. Mapp had a thing you wanted to ask about?
So I just wanted to say, we do have parents in the room, and I don't know, this is not to put you all on spot, but if you wanted to if you felt comfortable with sharing just what your thoughts are
You just have to press that
around, this potential policy, do you think that it's helpful, or like, what are your thoughts maybe about the direction that we're headed in? And that's if you feel comfortable with sharing.
My button don't work, nothing works. I really. Hi, I'm Sabrina McGee. I'm with We Excel Cincinnati. I'm also a parent of a child. He doesn't go to CPS, but they still do iReady testing. And I'm one of those parents that I want to know when when are they testing? What can I do to prepare my son and daughter for testing? But sometimes the language is, for me, it's easy to understand. But what about parents who have generational IEPs or 504 plans or learning disabilities that don't understand the verbiage or how to read a graph particularly? So I think this would be a great idea for parents to get an understanding of where their child is, and if they're falling behind, you get an A, and then you wonder why your kid ain't moving on in the second, third, and fourth quarter. And that's because they're getting an A in the class, but the proficiency isn't there. So I think it says reading at second grade level. So if my child is in the fifth grade, if it says reading at second grade level, I know that I have to be proactive in making sure that my child is successful. So I think that's a great idea.
It's already on. I think for me, just listening as far as like with simplifying it, I think that'll be great for parents to be able to understand where their kids are and where they need to be. And then as far as with adding that additional verbiage, even if it's just making just like a general comment when they print it out and hand it to the parents, as far as for here goes some tips and tools as far as what you can do at home, and this is what we're doing at school. So that way we could try to partnership and collaborate together to bring our students to where they need to be successful.
Yeah, Ms. Mapp is asking council to write down what you just said.
'Cause that was
Sorry.
good.
It was good. It was good. Thank you. Yeah.
And I would just want to add to both just to really focus, Serena Boyd, I do apologize, wow, right? Serena Boyd, my daughter actually attends Dater Montessori, and so her teachers are really big with communicating with me about her progress because I'm very just involved, right? But I don't think that every child receives that that type of conversation because parents are busy, parents are doing a lot of things, right? So when we were talking about what test are we actually using to put on the report card or which one we're going to use, I think we really need to build a strong foundation on what's important, right? Because what does that look like for me, just knowing where my child is on already, right? But is this the same test that's moving my child to the next grade? Or is this a cumulative test that's moving our children, and then what will be on that? So that's all I want to share because I'll get like deep in the woods, but I think that's what's going to be the most important. What is moving our children, and what do our children need to move collectively together with all the tests, because there's so many of them. And then how do we build off of that? Thank you.
I just want to say thank you. You all have really shared some, invaluable tools. And so thank you for the feedback because it is a partnership. It is a collaboration. And so I thank you all for just exercising your voice in this moment to help us, help you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Hoying, I was going to make a Charles Dickens reference or some kind of author.
So what I've heard is that the board would use option 1 as the text, but probably before the no less than twice, the new language. This is our what we've gathered, that you would add, the board's purpose is to increase families' data literacy about student outcomes, and specifically to ensure that parents are informed about students' performance in the classroom, as well as their proficiency compared to peers in other districts.
I think we just strike in other districts,
Okay.
just peers,
To peers.
because
Okay.
I think it's not
To peers.
peers.
I like that.
And I think that sounds good. Is there language about the snapshot and time
Yep,
piece?
the second thing
Sorry.
would be I believe at the end. Yeah, right after the preceding 2 paragraphs also apply only to report cards. So this would say, the administration will include language that any testing is a snapshot in time and that the teacher shall provide additional context for interventions and enrichments.
Yeah, I just don't want to push. Yes, that's what we said.
Yeah.
I want to say really clearly the shall versus may thing with the teacher. I'm open, right? Like I think that what I don't want to do is create another body of work for teachers who are already working very hard. What I do want to do is communicate what I think is a shared value that like we all want to be in this together. I I worry that the shall is what we said a minute ago, but like, I still don't know that it feels quite right.
Can I hear that again?
Yeah, I need to hear
Yeah,
it.
the last sentence. Yeah.
Yeah.
The administration will include language that any test, oh, sorry, God. Yeah. Excuse me. The administration will include language that any testing is a snapshot in time and that the teacher shall or may provide additional context for interventions and enrichments.
Can we just do will? Teacher will,
yeah.
will include? Or can?
You're not worried about that creating extra work?
No, I think, so to the point that the parents made, for me, I believe that it was already an expectation for that to be done anyway. And so if we're talking about, we're presenting this information so that our families are able to be informed, it's also incumbent upon us to make sure that we have recommendations on how to continue to stretch our students wherever they are with their reading or math levels. And so I think that additional information is necessary.
And I would agree with you. So thank you for saying that. I don't think it's additional work. I think it's work that's already included in the job duty.
Okay.
The administration wants to say.
No, I just want to clarify. So when the additional work piece, I guess in my mind, I was thinking that we were talking about the snapshot, but also when the snapshot is not aligned to where a child is, right? So then that would be where the additional comments would come in, so that it says I'm a 500, but I should be a 650 based on where I am. So I'm gonna, as a teacher, say, I've seen Alicia at a 600 work in my class. I'm just using numbers right now, you guys know. And because of what I've seen in class, on her cadence, on her comprehension, whatever, when I thought of, my mind went to drop down menu about work, because teachers could sit and decide, what are we going to say? Not necessarily they're going to click a button, but we're going to talk about interventions. We're going to talk about the enrichments that we're doing at our school that is helping that child get to that space. Are we not saying that, or are we just saying that they're going to add comments even if the snapshot is on grade level, if I'm on fifth grade?
Yeah, I would like to share a perspective on this for just a second. I think this is a good example of how complex this will get.
Yes.
And what I'd like to do is keep the policy at an altitude that allows people who are closer to this to figure it out. So if we said something like, the district will provide a way for teachers to share important feedback with parents. Like, that leaves room.
Say that one more time.
The district will provide a way for the teacher to share feedback, additional context with the parent or the family. That way they can share all the things.
That they feel that they need to
Okay,
share.
and it also doesn't overly prescribe, and, okay.
I like that.
Yes.
Superintendent, did you want to?
I'll just go ahead and share my thoughts since the chair is allowing me to, but I thought that conversation was really, really great. I think we were all stirred by what the parents shared in this conversation. So my thought around this before we came to this conclusion was that I wonder if there is language, and perhaps this can just be handled procedurally, around the parent voice in this, and the parents have the opportunity to speak with the teacher about what does this mean and what does this look like in terms of next steps. Could be just done procedurally.
I think that sounds great. And there's I would say two things. A, I'm happy, one person, happy to consider adding language. B, I think even if we don't add any language, you can still do everything you just described, procedurally, to your point. And I think it's great. So do we, I'd like to make sure we have other really important things we need to talk about this morning. Could council just summarize what the edits are from this, because that would let us put something forth to the whole board while this particular policy committee is still together this year.
Yes, again, sorry. So again, using option one language before the new red line, adding the board's purpose is to increase families' data literacy about student outcomes, and specifically to ensure that parents are informed about students' performance in the classroom, as well as their proficiency compared to peers. At the end of the section, And here's my question. It says the administration will include language in the grade report. Is that what we're saying? The administration will include language. That
This is
any
about the spot
testing-
in time?
Yes, is a snapshot in time. The administration will include language that any testing is a snapshot in time.
We could, do you want to keep going, or did you?
I was thinking you could say the administration will include language on the grade report. Is that what the intent is there?
Yeah, like whether it's on the report or a sheet of paper that comes behind it, like, I don't know that I care, but just that there's a way that what it is and
With
what
the
it
grade
isn't.
report, yeah.
With, sounds great.
That's good. With the grade report. All right, so the administration will include language with the grade report that any testing is a snapshot in time, and the district will provide a way for the teacher to provide additional context for interventions and enrichments. That's what we have. And then the superintendent had a comment about parent voice also.
We can add that procedurally. That was what I was
Yeah.
thinking before that final conversation.
And does that last piece about, can you, just the
Yep.
thing about shall versus will and where we landed on the, can you just read, did we?
I've got will right now, but
You said something
But we were
before that
gonna-
did not have the will. It was, you said something. And it was
will
perfect.
provide a way
Oh, will
for the
provide a way.
teacher to
That's
provide
perfect.
additional
That's great.
context. Sorry, yes.
Will provide a way.
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to, it's the additional work piece for me that's like, keep ringing in my ears. When, we receive quarterly reports from the school, you know there's a section at the bottom for teachers to make comments. So instead of it being additional work, just, just give us a snapshot at the bottom of the, the grade report. That way you won't have to add additional paper. Nobody won't have to download an app to,
I think it's good. I like that.
Just add the
She
comment.
knows us very well.
Add the comment in the space.
Add the comment.
Yeah.
And if, and if it's like real, if it gets really deep,
And that's a conversation.
you can actually request, the teacher can say, hey, come and see.
Yes, I would agree with you
Or
on that.
when we have parent-teacher meetings and stuff like that, that'll be an opportunity for the parent, the child, and the teacher to sit down and formulate a plan.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Absent other objection, I'm going to recommend that we put this on the board agenda as a recommendation out of policy committee, and that we keep going because we have some other things to talk about. Any objection?
I
Okay.
agree.
Turning to 9212, non-school organizations.
Thank you, and we have, again, grateful to have the treasurer and internal auditor here today. This arose, and we mentioned it in sort of other business last week. This arose in a review of this policy, which applies to non-school organizations are parent-teacher, PTOs, PTAs, booster clubs, alumni foundation, friends of. These are support organizations for the school. They're separate from the school. They generally have a 501c3. They're a separate corporate entity, but they exist to raise money and to support the school. Our primary purpose in bringing this to you is in reviewing this, we found that there was significant language in here saying that when an NSO, when a PTA, a PTO is doing a fundraiser, there may not be any student participation in that fundraiser. In other words, there's no walkathons, there's no readathons, there's no, if there's a carnival even that the PTO or PTA is putting on, it's hard to see, it suggests, the language suggests that students may not participate. This is not required by law. It's not consistent with what other school districts do, and I think our perspective is that it unnecessarily handcuffs our PTOs from doing fundraisers that every other PTO in the state is engaging in. And so our primary purpose in bringing this to you is to recommend that we remove those handcuffs and allow NSOs to engage in the same kind of fundraising that's going on in lots of other districts, lots of other PTOs, PTAs, et cetera. So that's our main purpose. In reviewing, we made a couple of other changes. For example, we found that some other district policies do have some guidelines for participation in student fundraising, in fundraising activities, students' participation. For example, that it's always voluntary, that you're not You're not saying you can only go on this field trip if you participate in the fundraising activity. So we recommend that some of those also be included here. And then there's some other changes I'm glad to review. Another example of kind of us unnecessarily handcuffing ourselves, on page 3, bullet 4, district employees may not be compensated by NSOs for school-sponsored activities. The ethical rule is that they may not be compensated by an NSO for performing their public duties. In other words, you can't pay a teacher additional money for what they're supposed to do as a CPS teacher. But we do have some programming in schools, like after-school programs and things like that, where you may have a paraprofessional who does his or her job full day for CPS as a para, and then picks up additional hours being paid by an after-school program by watching kids after school. That's not always done by the NSO. Sometimes that's done by Families Forward or YMCA or whatever. But if it were, I don't know that we need to prohibit them from participating. Glad to answer your questions, yeah.
Do you have the red line version that we can see?
Yes, it's not online.
It's just all, there's no red
It doesn't look like it normally
Gosh,
does.
it's in the packet. It's in the hard packet that's attached, and I
Can you
will
just
make sure it's
send-
uploaded.
Yeah, send me the red line one.
Is it a Word version, Rob? No, it's a PDF. I'm not sure why it's showing up like that. Yes, we will work on posting that right now. So I guess that would be a final version there. It's only showing the, on the left where the lines are is where the changes are, but we'll get it posted right now. Glad to answer any questions in the meantime. Do two things at once here.
From Ms. Haverkus, did you have a?
I just wanted to add additional context and background. So we also were given an assignment from the Finance Committee at the September meeting to revisit kind of the handling of donations, especially in light of our new foundation. Where is the line, the border between CPS, between public funds, and then those that are categorized under our foundations or other NSOs more broadly? So we brought a presentation back to the October 17th Budget, Finance, and Growth Committee, in which we took the policy as it stood, formatted in a table, and said, here are the clear lines between things. And I think it really brought to light, just as General Counsel Hoynes said, those very distinct and very restrictive circumstances that are in our policies. So I think as, I should just speak for myself, but as an auditor, we just like to see a policy that contains clear enough guidelines that external auditors would be able to clearly recognize what are public funds that should be handled and deposited and upheld to governmental standards, and then conversely, what are funds that are fully recognized as NSOs and handled by their accounting practices. So I just wanted to share a few steps prior, and I think it's a great opportunity to revisit, and perhaps Treasurer Guston, has other things to add.
Yeah.
Treasurer.
I would, yes. Yes, thank you, Lauren. So I do appreciate Dan's work on this. I know three of us have had multiple conversations, starting from the assignment from the Budget, Finance, and Growth Committee. And I do appreciate a lot of the changes that he's made. I think there's a lot of good information in here. There's some things about adhering to USDA guidelines for food. There's some better language about not commingling funds. I think there's a little bit I would have added there about employees who do so could be subject to discipline, but there's a lot of good things here. The one thing I'm still a little concerned about, to be honest, and it's not a surprise to Dan because I told him I would say this, is there's not a good, clear, bright line between when an activity is a student activity, fund activity, and when it can be an NSO activity. I think the current policy was way too restrictive to some of the examples he said, like the way you read our policy, if there was a carnival on a Saturday, our kids technically shouldn't participate because it very specifically said they should not be a seller or a buyer or anything. I think that was way too restrictive. And so I think this is a good change. I'm still not sure though that we have, like I said, a clear bright line that someone could look at and say, because part of I think what key to policies is giving people on the ground guidance to say, this goes in this bucket, this goes in this bucket. I think the current proposal is a little vague in that, and I think what you'll see is more NSO stuff done that I think might have been student activity fund things, just because people, to be honest, people like the lack of restrictions around NSOs, because NSOs don't follow, because of their own 501c3, they don't follow the same guidelines that we do. But I also think, there are reasons that money becomes public funds, and there's a level of accountability, there's a level of clear guidance, I mean, if we're raising money as a school for a student activity fund, like those students are going to determine exactly where that money goes. If we're raising it as a district activity, we're going to determine exactly how that money's spent. It's going to follow every guideline and every rule. It's going to be reviewed, audited, approved, all those things. NSOs don't have the same things, and 99% of the time, it's kind of immaterial because they're aligned. Our NSOs are very much aligned, but when they're not aligned, I think we need to think about that.
So oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Dan.
Do you want to add what Lauren and Treasurer Guston and Internal Auditor Haverkosh, she has a new last name, had proposed as a new bright line would be school day activities. So anything that happens during the school day, including a bake sale or walkathon or something where you're taking away from school activities, should be deposited with the school and can't be an NSO fundraiser, versus outside of the school day, that would be open to NSOs to do fundraising. I think that is a good bright line rule. I'm not 100% sure that we would, for example, for the rest of this year, have alignment with that. And so we might want to make that a future effective date or something like that. I want to make sure we're following policy as well.
I'm wondering too, this is another altitude thing, how much of these things could be solved by administrative procedures, where we pass something that makes things lowercase b better, and then you all write some procedures that are within that policy that get it to do exactly what you want it to do. And then if you need to change them, you could change them.
That's true. I think probably the current writing, we could administrate a procedure around that, because there's a lot of mays and shalls. And so we might change some of those to the superintendent shall develop procedures for that, or the treasurer, or superintendent, however you want that to read.
Yeah, I think the big picture is getting out that requirement that a student may never be participating in an NSO fundraiser. That we don't need to do that, and that's our main purpose for coming to policy.
That's great. And so I think I'm trying to, are we A or B? A, what we have today is such that we can put it forward and it will do the things that you all need it to do? Or B, you'd like to come back next month with an edited version?
What about we move forward with the addition of the administration shall develop procedures to implement this policy?
Works for, yeah.
Maybe one quick reference to is on number 5 on page 1. If we could add a circular reference to the newly amended, adopted gifts, grants, and bequests policy, there is a reference going the other direction. It might just be nice to link those two together, so if people are looking between policies.
And you sent me that note.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I think for me at least, there's a lot of moving parts that have just occurred, which I think all could be definitely beneficial to enhancing the policy. I know that we may want to move it forward, but I think you all have raised some really good points, especially you, Treasurer Guston, about what could be enhanced or strengthened with the language. So, I mean, I'm only one person on the committee, but I think it may be helpful just to take some time with it to, go back in and be able to assess what needs to be changed. And I'm also curious, and I think you all are speaking to it, but the, how it aligns or connects to the crowdsourcing policy, or how it connects to, it may be the student activity or the fundraiser policy. I know that we have some policies in place, and so how we delineate between the two and how they align, I think, for me, would be helpful.
if I may, could we do a policy that just strikes for now? Because I think as we've found, like we're
We're out of compliance now.
we're acting out of compliance.
We should
now.
fix that.
Could we very quickly, as an intermeasure, strike that one line out of the current policy? I think everyone
be okay with that.
agrees that moves us a lot closer, and then come back with a more thought-out version.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I was actually going to say that I agree with Board Member Lindy in terms of having you all kind of sift through and utilizing your expertise, but I could go with Board Member Mapp as well. But yes, striking that out and then
I
coming
like
back.
that. I can agree with that.
Great. So then we'll put that through consent agenda. Yeah.
Yep. Sorry.
Great. So that takes care of 9212. We're now on to 9142 LSTMCs.
Thanks. This is a relatively minor change, but it was discussed not last policy meeting, but in October.
We may have the same red line issue, I think, with this one. Is it not? Can you scroll down for a sec, Rob?
I think when you PDF, it's PDF final.
They're showing up on mine. Not from board docs, but yeah.
Interesting.
And it's in the hard copy. We'll make sure the colorful red line is added to the board docs. The only change we made from our October meeting is on the number 14, which says participate that the LSTMC, one of the roles is to participate in the principal selection process by participating in interviews and making a recommendation to the superintendent. We've added as provided in board policy 3111.1, and an individual serving as an interim principal shall not participate in the principal selection process.
Great.
Thank you. This is right in line with what we talked about, I think. I don't have any other comments on this one. Do you?
I do, yes. The only additional thing that I will add here is what we referenced before. So I think what is included is good, but also making sure that there's language to reflect the administration or superintendent selection process, making sure that framework is followed as well.
So you
Or
want,
just adhering to the superintendent selection, principal selection framework.
the framework that,
Yeah.
okay, yes.
Oh, I thought
Putting
that
that-
had already been added. Thank you for raising
No,
that.
it's not there. But yes, that's a good point, Board Member Mapp.
This was the one about there are these different requirements that live in different places. So
Yeah.
pulling them all into
And being
one
consistent with everything.
piece.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and adding it here, I just want to
Yeah,
make
I
sure I'm
think to
doing
number
what you're
14,
asking. Yep.
Well, so if I'm remembering this correctly, this goes back a couple meetings ago, I think. And the problem we were solving for was that different policies had different requirements about how a principal is chosen.
So, yeah, so there wasn't a process or maybe a process that spoke to all of the policies. So there were policies in place, but there was an alignment to those policies. So the updated principal selection framework that the superintendent administration worked on has pulled all of those things together to make sure it's one streamlined process that all of the LSDMCs will follow for the principal selection interview selection process.
So the tool now exists.
Yes. Yes.
What we're doing is making sure the policy
reflected.
says that tool will be provided
Yes.
to the LSDMC running it.
Absolutely.
And are you asking for that verbiage to be added to that line 14, like another
Yes,
sentence?
just another
Okay,
sentence, yeah.
I would agree with that.
Got it.
Superintendent or council, any concerns or questions? We're on the same page. So then, given how many times we've talked about this, I feel like we should list it separately on the agenda.
Okay.
Then I don't know, but unless you disagree.
I mean, it's fine.
Okay. Cool. Are we going too fast?
Nope.
No rush. Take your time.
Ben moves like lightning speed.
I've been in some long board meetings. We're gonna have some short policy committee meetings.
Have you?
I think it's a good balance there.
We're ready.
All right. So moving right along. After After I talk about moving quickly, I misplaced my agenda.
I'm trying to shuffle from.
Let's go to new assignments. Outside board council.
Okay, thanks. This was from the discussion from the October meeting. There was a request to use the language that was in the model policy that was posted on board docs. This is essentially cut and pasted from that model policy. Thing I would add, so this is an entirely new policy. There would be, if adopted, some pretty significant changes to our current practice and our current structure of the Office of General Counsel. So making you aware of that.
Could you, as we get started with this, Dan, would you give us a flyover of what you think the 2, 3, 4 most meaningful differences that board members would notice would be?
Certainly. So one, with respect to the operation of the Office of General Counsel, it's relatively similar with respect to all the work we do in the schools. So sitting IEP meetings, participating in union negotiations, all of that would be similar. The one thing that I think we do now that this would prohibit our office from doing is we have been involved in matters involving the employment of the superintendent, the treasurer, we have not engaged outside counsel in those negotiations. So there've been, I mean, just since I've been here, I think 4 different negotiations with superintendents, and that's always come directly from our office. We've worked with the board and the incoming superintendent to negotiate contracts, et cetera. This would say that must go to outside counsel. There's some reporting obligations. I hope that we keep the board well informed of legal matters. This would formalize that a bit. No real concern there. The addition would be the sort of formal recognition of a board counsel. And I will say that the model policy is written that this is not mandatory on the board, but discretionary. So the board may engage what is referred to here as a board counsel. That would be counsel that would really represent specifically the board. We've never done that before in terms of having an ongoing relationship with board counsel. We have had specific matters where we have felt that because of a potential conflict of interest or other reasons, we have engaged counsel specifically for the board. But we have never had this as an ongoing relationship. This would contemplate that an RFP be done and that there be sort of an ongoing board counsel relationship outside of the Office of General Counsel. Something to note as well, so I think it's common where a 7-person board has differing views on a certain subject, and I mean, we go through that a lot. This would say that board counsel can be engaged if either the board president asks for the board counsel to be engaged or 3 members of the board. So it wouldn't require a majority, but it would be either the board president or 3 members. That's when board counsel would be engaged. And then upon request of either the board president or I guess 3 members, the board counsel could be involved in all kinds of things, including reviewing and evaluating board policies and policy proposals. That work has always been done only in the Office of General Counsel. I don't ever remember a situation where we've engaged board counsel. I mean, maybe on Title IX we had some help, but even that was, I think, engaged through our office, not by the board directly. So policy committee could be staffed by board counsel instead of general counsel. Assist in the drafting of legal documents that are adopted or executed by the board. I would say nearly every month we have some, either a real estate document or a significant contract or partnership agreement that comes through our office, and we ask for the board's signature and approval on it. These would potentially all go through board counsel instead of the Office of General Counsel. Attending all board and committee meetings. Again, that's not been the case. And
These lawyers bill by the hour.
Right.
Yeah, I know that would be some expense. So something to keep in mind. Certainly not something within the current budget of the Office of General Counsel. So that's significant new expense. So that's I would say the highlights of what would be new and different about this policy.
I will say, if I can Chair.
Please.
So one, thank you for going through and presenting this, because I was one of the members that was, trying to get an idea of what that would look like. I do think that you have made a good case to say that this will be a completely a restructure of our current practice, and that would require a heavy lift, and it would come with some financial implications, which I don't necessarily want to try to impose on our district, because we're not in that place. But what I would think would be helpful, and you raised this point at the last meeting, which I really appreciated, if there's language, I don't know if it referenced another policy, I don't know if it's around like the superintendent evaluation or something of the sort, where, maybe there's language to suggest in the event that there could potentially be a conflict where outside counsel would be considered. I think something to that extent could be helpful. So continuing to maintain our current structure, our current practices, but just some language to suggest that in the event that there is a potential conflict of interest or duality, that this would be what the policy requires of the board.
I have I'm open to that. And one other idea could be in addition to, could be instead of, but wanted to put on the table. The origin story for this draft is that it is a model policy from a group called School Board Partners, which runs professional development for school board members around the country. I've been a member of this group for some time. I know our current board president's been a member. I think Mrs. Weinberg is a member. I think Ms. Mapp is a member. So a lot of people are a part of this group. My hypothesis is that there are some reasons why they wrote this policy this way that I actually don't know and fully understand. And so one of the ideas I was kicking around in my head, at least, was we could try to invite the people who wrote it to come to a policy committee meeting virtually, and just answer our questions about some of these things. Because I think it would be nuts for us to sign on to a policy that we need to pay a council to come to every minute of every board meeting. That's just a ton of time, and it seems like a useless expense, particularly when our current group does such a nice job. But there might be some really important reason they have for that I don't know about, And so, because I don't know, when I was thinking about this a little bit, this would imply more changes to our current practice than I was ready for, and also, the reason this is on the agenda was Eve was encouraging us to make the general counsel a direct report of the board. I don't think that's a good idea. I think the superintendent needs her or his own office of general counsel, and the board may need counsel. So I was just going to offer that as an idea.
I think that would be great to continue on the conversation as well for the next board meeting.
Thank you. But did you want to go in a different direction? I am open.
No, I mean, I think that would be a great starting point. Again, I don't think that we're in a position to restructure anymore our current practices from a systematic lens or financial lens. But I do think it raised a lot of good, points and potential questions to ask. And maybe they also could assist in helping us navigate what I did raise about maybe there could be language, right? That maybe we don't have this full policy draft written out, but there could be some areas that we, insert in other policies to make sure that there's limiting the potentiality for conflict of interest or duality.
Yeah. I think it makes a lot of sense.
I agree.
So everyone is of accord that I will reach out to School Board Partners and see if we can have somebody join a next meeting. Okay. Clayton, yeah. Okay, great. Moving right along, we're now on enrollment in neighborhood schools.
The
It is
red line
It
version
is.
comes up.
I already checked it. It's red line. It is
Okay,
there.
great.
Yes.
Thank you. Next policy is the enrollment in neighborhood schools, and this follows a discussion at the end of the board meeting on Monday evening about this policy. I've only changed one thing from the previous version, and it's highlighted. I'm hoping it's highlighted.
It's highlighted.
Okay. You have it, yeah. So there was a lot of discussion and differing viewpoints. The one thing I thought I heard from several board members was to ensure that our other policies are followed with respect to out-of-district students enrolling in our neighborhood schools. There is a whole separate policy that relates to that. It's policy 5113. It's already referenced, but for clarity, we added out-of-district students who have a parent who is employed by the district shall have priority over other out-of-district students. I thought that was the point that some
Yeah, I
board
think
members
that's what I heard.
wanted to ensure was made. Beyond that, I have not made any changes. There were some very significant changes proposed, including the definition of who's a sibling and things like
Right.
that. So
Yeah.
welcome
we
your
were ready
thoughts
for
and
that.
questions.
Yeah, and so this is just clarifying question. The highlighting, this is no new content.
That
right?
is-
It is referencing, sorry, I mean, it's newly added language, but all it's doing is referencing a policy that already exists.
Correct, and the other changes were not new substantive
Right.
changes.
Correct.
We talked about that, I think, at
Correct.
length. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't, yeah, colleagues, what do you all think?
I would accept it
Yeah.
as is.
I would accept it as well. Was it just oversight? It maybe to this policy as to why it wasn't included? I know, as we talked about Monday, and today is referencing other policies. I'm just curious to know, was it just maybe merely oversight as to why it wasn't added here?
Or to emphasize maybe is what I would
Okay.
say, because it is in
emphasis.
5113 that
Okay.
district employee, out-of-district employees, students,
Yeah.
kids are prioritized over out-of-district non-employees.
Yeah, so
Having it in the same
Same,
place.
right, no, I
Same.
agree. I was just saying, like, I know it was referenced in other places,
Yep.
and I was just, curious if it was just an oversight in terms of it being referenced here.
So, someone said during the meeting, and this is absolutely right, that if you are an employee who lives within the district, you're a taxpayer and everything else, you're treated just like all other residents. They're all treated the same within the district. Out of district, there's a priority for employees, students.
over other out-of-district
Over
students.
other out-of-district
Yeah,
students, that's
yeah.
right. And resident students are always given priority over non-resident students.
I don't feel a need to create new problems by changing the sibling language
Yeah,
or
yeah,
anything
yeah,
else.
I don't either.
I appreciate the thought that has gone into this. I think we can say, hey, technically this was already in here, but just to make it even clearer, we've added this language. And then take that back to the board. Great. Great.
Yeah, sorry, one addition,
okay.
that what went forward to the board and what should go forward in the next meeting is one additional change that was proposed that somehow got left off of this version. The last sentence will say, the neighborhood enrollment policy will be reviewed by the board and
And
administration on an annual basis to ensure families have continued equity of access to district schools.
Yes, I like
Great.
Yes.
Excellent.
And so to that point, Jan,
Yes.
I want to ask about our special education student placements. And so can you, Superintendent Murphy or Dan, can you all speak to this? Because we do want to ensure that it is an equitable process, that students are being able to be placed in environments that are going to be too conducive to their needs and to their learning experience. And so I'm bringing this up because I do know that some families have had some challenges with this. So I want to make sure that to the point of equity, that there's that alignment there. So can you all speak to that? Is it something that we need to make sure is reflected, or is it a procedural process that we adhere to?
So procedurally, I can tell you, if a family comes in the customer care center and the student has an individualized education plan, we partner with Department of Student Services before school is assigned. So, and then I'll let Chrissy join me, but looking at what the specific needs of the students might be, whether it's a specialized classroom or no, we get that guidance and partnership. Is that accurate?
Exactly right. For enrollment purposes, for equity, they're treated just like all students are.
And decisions about their appropriate placement are made by the IEP team at the school level. Now, we do support them from central office, as Superintendent Murphy said, but those are team decisions that are made. And it should happen at the school level with parents, with school staff, and based on data that the student has.
Okay, and so does that also adhere to, so even with the school placement, what their classroom placement?
Yep.
Entails?
All of that.
Okay. All right, and so is that somewhere, is that written procedurally? Again, I don't know if it's reflected in this, I know we approved that, the special education policy, and it was quite lengthy. I don't know if that's something that's incorporated in there. I know that that was something that we were required to do. But I do want to make sure we're drilling down on this, because I have had some constituents share their concerns about how their child is being placed. And so if it's not in this particular scope, where does that land?
And it can be, the document that you approved in a previous meeting is a little bit above that. It's a little bit of a level above that. But we do have procedures in place that outline how this works. All of the schools know the procedures, and we have it. I'm happy to share that with you so that you can see what it is. And it sometimes there can be, it can seem to a parent like there can be a delay depending on what the placement is going to be, because there are, for example, the most clear example is if the student needs to go to a separate facility, for example, that is not one of our in-school placements, they need to be accepted at that place, and there is a time constraint, and sometimes that can be confusing for families when they come in.
Okay.
But it's not an enrollment delay, it's more of a delay in placing them. We do provide them with education in the interim while they're waiting for that specific placement.
Okay, thank you for that. So
And
I
I
don't.
have
go
a
ahead.
question. Do you also have it listed, or are parents aware of where they can find that procedure? You said that teachers are aware or staff is aware.
Yes, yep. And I will share that with you too. It's on our website, and I'll make sure that everybody, I will just verify that it's
Because I know
out
when
there for
parents
everyone.
reach out to us. I
Absolutely.
never know.
Yeah, that's
but
good.
yes.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Anything else on 5120?
I hesitate to ask, but is this consent?
We have to take it out. I don't want it to look like we're trying to sneak something through. There was a big discussion about it, but I without comment on other things, I think we should just head it out. Okay. We're on to 5630.
That was mine.
Yeah. Mrs. Weinberg, do you want to start
Yeah,
with this?
I'll just start. And on this particular policy, I just wanted to kind of just review the policy. And then in the third paragraph, I just had some questions regarding, one, reviewing over the policy, what are the steps and process when this is utilized? And obviously, I know that we probably will not make any decisions today. I'm okay with it being an ongoing conversation, but I just wanted to bring emphasis and awareness. Also knowing with the parents and students, how are they aware of that process if it is utilized? And then will this be included in our district handbook?
And if you may have said this, and if you do, I'm sorry I missed. I wanted to clarify. Did the 5630 and 8410 go together as one discussion, or are they separate things? you
No,
want to
I
talk
don't
about?
think that I listed that. I only listed 5630.
Does somebody else have 8410? That's not mine.
No, they're similar. They have somewhat similar purposes.
Okay,
Or
so
is
this
that-
is
or is it- hold on, hold on. Let me look at this.
I
really quick.
didn't list it separately, though.
Okay, so you didn't list it separately. Yeah, no, it was just the previous one. So
Okay,
no, not
thank you.
8410 for me.
Thank you.
I just had 5630 and just the process, procedure, and awareness to families and students.
Well, I'll start. Again, glad to have the superintendent and director of student services with me as well. The underlying policy that is the CPS's policy, as well as the law, is that that staff may use reasonable force with students to prevent them from harming themselves, other students, staff. That is law. That is what we train on. That is our policy, and it's reflected in our procedures for responding to kind of student issues where a student needs to be held back or force used to prevent the student from, for example, running into traffic. We are absolutely authorized to use force to stop a child from running into traffic. That would be, beyond that, it has to be reasonable, and those are the circumstances when force can be used with a student.
And then just with my question of when that is utilized, just what is our process and procedure? And so I don't know if the superintendent wants to kind of talk about that, or is this something that we need to put in place? I'm open to hearing thoughts.
So one of the things that we just did is reviewed, we had a conversation, a very brief conversation with principals on Wednesday. And then Dan came in the principals meeting, correct, yesterday. Assistant principals conversation yesterday afternoon. And then the deputy and I also talked about needing to review with the principals a little more in detail. There is a training in our school district, CPI training, that's available to any of our staff personnel. We may want to look at how we can make that a little bit more widespread, but it's definitely discussed with principals on a regular basis as an opportunity.
And CPI it's Crisis Prevention Institute. It is the gold standard that is used for, and I want to emphasize, most of the training is built around how to de-escalate situations. That is the training. Using force, which is also a part of the training, is always considered a last resort. That's right. And so we try to get as many people as we can. We want to emphasize to everyone that if they have the opportunity to get CPI trained, it is great for themselves, to protect the school, and to protect and serve our students. So we do a lot of CPI training with our security assistants. We do CPI training with our teachers who are in specialized classrooms, like our autism units and our MD units, strides units. But there are opportunities for teachers to become CPI trained, and we love when they take advantage of that.
And I just want to tag on to, we also utilize mobile crisis.
I was just getting ready to ask
Yes,
about
ma'am.
that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Mhm. And so maybe there is also a need to do a review and a reminder of how to access mobile crisis, and we definitely can do that immediately.
You definitely read my mind, because that was going to be my next question. And I just want to make sure that we are, again, being transparent with families so that they are aware and they know what would be the process or procedure if my child did have to have some type of restraining done. What would be the steps, mobile crisis, or, what's 1, 2, 3, and 4, just so that they're aware.
Could I speak on this issue?
Please.
I am not an expert on grading, but I feel like I am an expert on this. And I don't know if the board understands the pressure that a lot of teachers are under to handle students who are not in their least restrictive environment, including students who have very violent behaviors, who are in regular ed classrooms with teachers who have not had the training or experience to deal with these students. And we have had dozens of teachers who have been assaulted this year and injured, including a teacher, and I don't know if the board has seen these pictures. We had a teacher who was hit in the face by a student with a hard object who has black and blue from here to here, huge contusion, is undergoing physical therapy because her concussion was so severe. She has balance and dizziness issues, even though this occurred 2 weeks ago. We have another teacher who had a severe concussion, went back to work, and within 2 days had another severe concussion because she was hit in the back of the head by a student, and that's what the first time, and then the second time was hit in the head by a student with earphones. We've had teachers who have been strangled, bitten, kicked, punched repeatedly. It doesn't happen to every teacher, but it's happened to dozens of teachers. And these are the assault reports that I'm aware of. In some instances, and I think because honestly, we've been complaining so much about this, principals have just recently been reminded by the administration of their obligation to provide teachers with assault reports when they're assaulted. But I know of an instance where the principal got 14 assault reports and never acknowledged a single one of them to the teacher and did not pass them on to the administration. I'm telling you, we are crying for help. And it might sound like I'm being dramatic or I'm exaggerating, but when a teacher suffers a severe concussion, we all know that that can affect you for the rest of your life. And it's just happening too much. I'm not sure that people who aren't dealing with this problem really appreciate the extent to which these children can be escalated and their behavior is like truly out of control. So CFT is advising people today to call the UC Mobile Crisis Unit. I think it's fair to say that most teachers, in fact, very few teachers were aware before of the opportunity to call the UC Mobile Crisis Unit. And so often we are in a situation where we say, if you don't think this situation was handled appropriately, what would you have done? And there are often not really good answers for that question. And so I hope the board can understand that with the benefit of hindsight, looking back on a situation dispassionately when you're not involved in the, very escalated situation, that, it might look like somebody could have done something better. But in the moment, these are very difficult situations. And I just hope the board can appreciate that. And if you haven't seen the pictures of some of these teachers, I would be happy to share them. I mean, it is a really serious problem in the district right now. We have a lot of students who are not in their least restrictive environment because they're waiting for those placements, or they're young students like kindergartners who have come in without ever having been in school before, without having been identified. That process can take quite a long time and a lot of documentation. And in the meantime, people are struggling. And it's really a plea. It's I think our most serious issue this year. Students seem to be experiencing more behavioral challenges. We're having more students who are like really have really severe behavioral problems than we've ever seen before. It's kind of like it's a completely different magnitude. And we're really, I'm getting calls like every day about students who teachers are having trouble not only knowing how to handle because they're getting repeatedly punched and kicked and that sort of thing, but other students are witnessing this behavior, and it's traumatic for them to see their teacher be beaten up by another child in the class. I think, teachers are functioning in loco parentis at times, and so for them to see their teacher being hit is like for them to see their parent being hit. And we're just really asking for some that the board experiences a sense of urgency around this issue that we are experiencing, and looking for more solutions for teachers. So anyway.
Thank you for sharing.
that.
Thank you for coming. I would like to ask while we're here whether our administration has ideas for how we might be helpful.
Yes, thank you. I do want to acknowledge that we do have challenging situations in our schools and in our efforts to educate all children. Sometimes children come to us, we don't know what those challenges are until they begin to manifest themselves. So I do acknowledge what Karen is saying. I also want to say that we also have to do due diligence and due process for children when there are particular situations. It is a process to be able to identify students for additional supports. Sometimes families are interested in that, sometimes they are not. It is challenging. I want to acknowledge that. Our Department of Student Services is working really hard to identify where we have gaps and what we need to do to address the very gaps Karen is speaking about. In the case of teacher assault, there is a process there, and we will remind principals if there is some sense that principals aren't sharing information, that our general counsel and his team work through a due process scenario with teachers as well when they are assaulted. Those things are in place. Unfortunately, some of them take time because of making sure we do things with due diligence and in the right way for everyone, to be able to come to the best solution for students. There are some students who need different placements that don't exist. And so we have to do our best to keep trying to educate them where we can. If it's a situation where there is home instruction that is needed, we still have a due diligence to see that through to make sure that kid is in the right environment. So I acknowledge, and I know that there is work that has to be done, and I know that there are resources that are times limited because even outside agencies don't have the space available.
Is there, before we move on, like, I'm wondering, is there something that we as a board or a committee could check in on in, say, our next meeting, or as evidence that, like, people are working together to try to figure this out? Like, what could look different in a number of weeks? I don't know how long that is.
I know
that
for
we could
me,
circle
Mr.
back
Lundy,
to.
I can check in, two things I do want to say. I can, check in with the CFT and General Counsel to make sure we have our arms wrapped around all of these 14 assaults or whatever the number might be, to make sure that we're aware and that we are dealing with them so that people don't feel like it doesn't matter to us. But then two, the communication about calling mobile crisis. The CFT president did share that with me this morning, just before this meeting. I did ask her if she would consider allowing us to have a conversation about what this looks like, sounds like, feels like, going out to our 3,500 teachers and the rest of our staff before it is done. I don't know what her response would be to that.
To the mobile crisis unit, having had to utilize that service as a counselor as well, understand wholeheartedly what that process is. But this to me speaks to the mental health and wellness policy that we worked on. And so there are so many resources that I know that is able to be of support to our teachers, to our students, such as our counselors, such as our social workers. Again, the policy and part of it was about creating that level of awareness and education about what resources we do have, what type of support should be in place or could be in place to help with the de-escalation practices. And then also talking about our own crisis response team. So I believe that it would be helpful for us to have some awareness and some true implementation of that policy, not for it to just be a theory in place, but actual application of it. Because again, we have trained professionals that in some capacity, I think, is able to help speak to a lot of the issues that are occurring, but not being utilized or being utilized in the best fit, right? And so making sure that we are maximizing and optimizing the resources that we have in our district, we have in our building. And then if our crisis response team is not able to support, then we defer out to the mobile crisis unit. But I think there needs to be that awareness of what supports are in our district and utilizing them to the full extent. And people want to be able to show up in their scope of practice, right? So I think that it's helpful for us to want to honor that. And also, again, I don't know where we are as it relates to implementing the SEL curriculum. This will not only help for teachers to be aware or district leaders to be aware, but it will also help with the students to have that resource in place for themselves to be able to regulate their emotions more effectively and efficiently. So I would, to your question about what can we do, that's an area that I think that we should make sure that we're leaning into.
And it also goes back, Board Member Mapp, to just the process of the different stages of who's called, when are they called, how are they called, and everyone being on the same page about that.
Karen, did you have a piece you wanted to add?
Well, I do want to add that I'm concerned about putting levels of protocol between a teacher making that, call. And because a lot of times teachers call the office and nobody answers. Teachers call security and security doesn't come. And at the end of the day, teachers, you know, as we all know, their license is on the line, their livelihood is on the line, and they're dealing with very challenging situations where they're trying to protect themselves or other students, or, you know, the student who's in crisis. But all those things get viewed, you know, with the benefit of 2020, and that kind of hindsight might look different than it looks in the moment. And so we're not encouraging teachers not to call the office, not to call security, not to ask their para to run across the hall for help. I mean, I think in the moment, teachers will continue to do all of those things. But I'm concerned about saying, before you call the mobile crisis unit, you have to do A, B, C, D, and E, because because I think teachers will be using their best judgment in doing that. I don't think that will be people's first call. But there are situations that could warrant that. And for me, honestly, it was a breath of fresh air to become aware of this as an alternative, because we've been, you know, wondering like, oh, like, what do you do? I mean, sometimes people get to the point, they don't know what else to do, and it's dangerous.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think just what I'm hearing you speak about is most importantly safety, and having resources that can help support with that level of safety. But I'm also hearing you speak about culture. And there needs to be something done within our culture where these situations aren't, I don't know how often they're occurring, but to your point, I have heard those concerns, and the concerns about, you know, students not being in the least restrictive environment, right, that will honor their academic experience. So I do think that, you know, we need to know honestly what those resources are first, and what levels, what tiers do we implement those different resources, because we don't want to overutilize a resource or underutilize a resource, or utilize that resource in the wrong manner. So we do have to be intentional with that. But again, at the root of what I'm hearing you say is addressing a culture issue that we need to lean into to ensure the safety of our students and our staff.
Yeah. I mean, I
think,
looked at the policy. I had not really reviewed policy 8410 before. And I thought it was interesting. It says, students of the district, as well as visitors, are entitled to function in a safe and drug-free school environment. I thought, wow, it doesn't even say staff. So I think they are too.
I agree.
So thank you. I appreciate your
No, and
presentation.
I would just say a couple things. Like, I know we're over a little bit, and I appreciate everybody's patience. I think this really matters. I think it's worth staying over for things that are really important. There are going to be limits to things the policy committee can do on this front. An easy thing would be to add that language. But if there are others too, I just wanted to keep that door open for this committee. Meanwhile, I'm sure this will come up at board meetings with a large group. And my hope is that as people work together on this, that in a couple of weeks, this can start to look and feel pretty different. And one thing we can do as a board is check in to see if that's happening. I would like to try to get us to, real quick.
That I just want to say, because this is a public meeting, we have said a couple of times that there are students who are not in their least restrictive environment, and I just want to be careful about using that language, because that is something that is a decision made by the IEP team, and we follow the IEP. And some people may not agree with that team decision, and may not think that it's the student's least restrictive environment, but it is something that is you know, on a legal document, and we do follow that document. I just
Thank you.
wanted to mention that.
Thank you. And do we have anybody for hearing of the public today? Comment to be read. Let's hear it.
This was on the grading policy, and this is from Allison Goodman, one of our parents. I'm a mom of 3 of the district at 3 different schools. Only one is still in elementary school, but I think this conversation is great. I also sadly think test fatigue is real for kids and parents, but I do agree that anything that helps a parent understand where their child tracks based off of those important tests would be a benefit. Getting a good grade in a class does not necessarily mean, sorry about that, I had to move it down. Getting a good grade in a class does not necessarily mean that a child is above grade level for various reasons, and communicating this with parents feels critical. As long as additional work isn't done, doesn't fall on individual classroom teachers, then getting this information to parents would be a great idea. Thank you for pushing this forward. leaving room for teachers to decide how to build their work. As Mr. Lindy just said, it's important that empowering parents starts with a conversation and feels like an added benefit of this policy. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We will see you in December. Have